Welcome to another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy, and this is another NFL Conference Championship preview edition of the show. Ian Cameron, and we've had a multitude of guests, a multitude of shows. We always do this late in the playoffs. We try to give you multiple shows, multiple perspectives on the games from various guests that you've seen on this show before. We've already done a few shows already this week with various guests, and I know we couldn't let NFL Conference Championship Sunday pass by without one of everyone's favorite guests, Rob Vino. That is what he has become here on the Football Frenzy. I always get asked, when are you going to have Rob Vino back on? And especially at this time of year, I said we've tried to keep it to once a month with Rob because he's got a lot going on too, like all of us. But now that we're down to the nitty-gritty here in the NFL playoffs, let's see if we can get Rob back on each week here in the remainder of the playoffs, and we'll try to get him back in 2 weeks as well to talk Super Bowl. Rob, we're down to the Final Four. Very interesting matchups. Looking forward to them. How's things going?
Things are good, Ian. Yeah, thanks for having me, first off. The amount of times that we've been together this season, it's, we were talking off air a little bit. When you're down to 2 games, there's only so much to say without totally changing stance on games, right? And unless something major happens, I don't think either of us is going to do that. But I've yet to really get in depth with anybody yet, so this will be my first with you, and then we'll be a little bit repetitive tomorrow. But for a good team, I mean, I guess you could say the 4 best teams made it, Ian. I don't know how you feel, but it seems to me 1 and 2 out of the AFC, and of course, my feeling has been for quite a while that Seattle was the premier team in the NFC. But the Rams, we'll get into it in a little bit, obviously will deserve to be there.
I've heard a lot of people say it, and I think I agree to it to a certain degree, that the Rams Seahawks is the real Super Bowl. That's for the Super Bowl, almost dismissing New England and Denver. It might be a little bit harsh to do that, but I definitely think, I know of the 2 games, if I'm being totally honest, Rob, that is the game I'm more excited about, Rams Seahawks, because I think it's just such a great tactical battle. The outstanding, dominant defense versus obviously the offense that can score points against pretty much everybody. That's an incredible matchup. I would say don't sell New England Denver short, but I know that's a lot of the narrative I've heard around social media, television, radio, you name it, that it's almost like the Rams and the Seahawks NFC Championship game. Winner wins the Super Bowl. Again, you got to play the Super Bowl, but no doubt that's a narrative I'm hearing going around, Rob.
Yeah, it is funny because any negative outlook towards Seattle, let's put it that way, is always prefaced by Sam Darnold. I just can't play Sam Darnold. But if Sam Darnold makes it to the Super Bowl, Ian, you probably won't hear a word out of people who don't want Sam Darnold anymore. Like all that just disappears because, as you're saying, a lot of folks, a high percentage of folks, consider this NFC Championship game to be the real Super Bowl. A shame what happened last week to Bo Nix to put Denver in this position. But we'll see. They still have to play the game. I'll tell you really quickly before we start, my youngest son has been a Seahawks fan since day one. I've been a Broncos fan forever. They played in the Super Bowl a few years back. Seattle beat their brains in. I get a text from him last week after the conclusion of finding out that Seattle and Denver were both going to be there. And he said, I'll tell you right now, if they play each other again, you're going to lose by 30. So even my son doesn't think.
I was going to say, I can't wait to do it again, Pop. Yeah.
Oh, man. I tell you what.
Can't wait to beat your team's ass again, Pops.
Gotta love your kids, Ian. I tell you.
Even though it's hard to when you have to deal with crap like that from their mouth. But nevertheless, the great, all in good fun, of course. But yeah, that's pretty interesting. See, and right, the last time I think Denver had a Carolina Super Bowl too, against the Carolina Panthers. But yes, they also had one against Seattle. And that one did not go so well, obviously, for the Denver Broncos there in that one. Just a quick opinion from you on what we saw last week. I mean, from a betting standpoint, it was some good, some bad. We both loved the Buffalo Denver over, and it was an easy winner last week. We talked about the reasons why we liked it, didn't even have to sweat it. So that was a great result. I really didn't have much on the 49ers Rams game, or 49ers Seahawks game. I should say, last week. I actually did, once it hit 7.5, take a small piece of San Francisco, but it was a tiny bet. And obviously Seattle just rolled them. The injuries caught up to San Francisco. I'm not going to make too much. I'm not going to get in. We've talked about it a lot on the previous shows, but was it a catch? Was it an interception with the Brandon Cooks deal with Jaquan McMillan down the field? If you're a Bills fan, you think it's a catch. If you're a Broncos fan, you think it's an interception. That's kind of where I'm at now with that. I've heard from enough both sides seeing it differently there at the end of the game. But you cannot just chalk all of that up to Buffalo losing. They had opportunities. When you just turn it over the amount of times they did, you give 3 points to Denver at the end of the first half with a turnover that was completely avoidable. Sometimes you get what you deserve, in that circumstance. But I think it was shocking, Rob, the Bo Nix situation, because nobody knew he was hurt, when that game ended.
Right.
We saw Will Lutz kick the game-winning field goal, and we saw him out there pretty much for every snap, but we had no idea he broke a bone in his ankle. We had no clue that happened until, obviously, after the game, there's Adam Schefter, and people were so shocked. They said, that's a fake Schefter account. Beware. That's a fake Adam Schefter. Beware. Nothing's wrong with Bo Nix. We just saw him finish the game. We just saw Denver win the game. He did the post-game interview, too, with Tracy Wolfson on the CBS broadcast. And didn't look like a damn thing was wrong. And then, of course, Schefter breaks the news, broken bone in his ankle, out for the rest of the playoffs, is going to need surgery. And then Sean Payton, about 10 or 15 minutes later, confirmed it in his post-game press conference. It was just a shockwaves through everybody hearing that news. No one thought it had happened when that game ended. And now Jarrett Stidham, next man up for the Denver Broncos, which we'll get into. And then Sunday's game, CJ Stroud's got to do some soul searching here. One thing you cannot do, and I give Darnold credit, he didn't do it. He didn't lose the game for his football team against Seattle. He played clean football against San Francisco. He made mistake-free, clean football, let his defense take care of the rest. They were all over Brock Purdy and the Niner offense. Stroud didn't do that. He was way too careless with the football, forcing it, throwing it when he's in the middle of being sacked. It just can't happen. Those kind of mistakes. And even you talk about it with certain quarterbacks, then they miss the gimme throws. How many gimme throws did CJ Stroud miss in that game? Simple rollout and bootleg, and he's throwing it 4 yards behind the receiver and into the turf. I mean, his accuracy throughout that game left a lot to be desired as well. So a real tough day at the office for CJ Stroud. And then Rams Bears, disappointing for us because we like the over. But the good news is I got just this weird feeling in my stomach before kickoff on Sunday. I said, I had 1 unit on Buffalo Denver over. It was my biggest bet of the weekend. And I had Rams Bears over for a half a unit. And I was thinking of elevating it to 1 unit. Didn't. I kept it at half a unit. And because of that, ended up being profitable with the two totals. I really like that one. Stayed under. It just bogged down really after the first quarter. I was shocked how much pressure the Bears defense got on Matthew Stafford at times in that game. But at the end of the day, Stafford with the drive in overtime, unbelievable throw to Adams. Put the football in a thimble in overtime to really get that drive going. Then they kick the field goal and they move on. But very entertaining set of games. Like I said, from a betting perspective, one with Buffalo, Denver over. Tiny bet with San Fran lost. New England, Houston was a good game for me. I did a Texans team total under and New England -3. In that game. I wasn't convinced Houston would move the football in that game against New England, and that came through. And, of course, we fell short with the Rams-Bears over. But, Rob, just some thoughts from you on the divisional games last weekend, and congrats to you as a Bronco fan seeing them in the AFC title game.
Yeah, back they come, maybe a little ahead of schedule this year, and maybe due to the, the mediocrity that was the AFC this year. I don't consider Denver to be a conference championship caliber team, but it is what it is at this point in time because all the heavyweights.
But now they're here and they have a chance like everybody else.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so does New England. I think New England's way ahead of schedule. I know way back when we'd have to go back to the tape in August, Ian, when we were making rapid fire predictions, college and NFL. I do remember thinking at that point in time that New England had an opportunity in the East. Still thought Buffalo was the better team, but they certainly they made the most of it. As far as what happened last weekend, Saturday was terrific for me. Both ends came through. The over in the Buffalo game, as you speak of, against Denver, that was really never in doubt from the outset. And then the Seattle Seahawks, which was also never in doubt, -7, 7.5. They just absolutely dominated the San Francisco offense. Sunday was a little different story. I did have the Houston New England game under the total, and the giveaways and the countless opportunities to score. First half, I mean, I was like, is anybody ever going to have to really move the football to score points here?
All the
Did not
turnovers
get under.
just hurt you. Yep.
It was
Yep.
terrible. And then the second game, like you say, the first 3 drives of the game, I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is going to be pretty easy. But really quick here, we've talked about this a lot, Ian, and it's just happened. So it happens way too often. Ben Johnson, another one of those coaches, at the end of a game, just looking for 3 points. We lose by 3 points, and he passed up 2 gimme field goals in the first half of that game to try and go for it. One time he went for it 3 times. One time he got a touchdown out of it, but the other 2 times he got 0 out of it. And I just wonder what these coaches are thinking so early in games, to give up on opportunities and to try for what are not gimme 4th down situations. 4th and 3 is not automatic by any stretch. So maybe his Dan Campbellitis got to him a little bit, but credit to, I found, even though he turned it over 3 times, I got a newfound appreciation for Caleb Williams. I mean, he did make some plays in that game that were incredible up against it. But again, the steadier team came through. And to your point, it is kind of crazy how the Bears could run the same exact blitz time and time again and watch LA not pick it up and get their quarterback killed. So we'll see what happens this week. Different matchups, different games. We can get into it.
You know what? And I've got to shout out some of the broadcasters too, the play-by-play guys in some of these football games I've watched lately. There's a lot of times I watch games and I listen to them and the play-by-play. I'm like, geez, I miss the days of Pat Summerall, an all-time great. I miss the days of Don Criqui. Yeah, that's really going back. And, you miss some of these, great voices of the past when it comes to play-by-play of NFL. Dick Stockton, he did it for a very long time. But there were some greats back in the day, no question about it, that did play-by-play for NFL football without a doubt. Dick Enberg, of course, did it for a very long time. But I got to tip my cap to some of these play-by-play guys with some of the call. Mike Tirico on the call of Caleb Williams' touchdown was electric, when he pulled off that Houdini act in that game against the Rams. Jim Nantz has had some great calls. Kevin Burkhardt on Fox has had some great calls. Sean McDonough has been spectacular with some of his calls, down the stretch in the college football playoff. Fowler, I think, has gotten a lot better, since he began. So the newer, the broadcasters of today, I always go back and I think, boy, I miss some of these, old timers and these legends and these guys that have been retired for a long time. But I tip my cap to some of the calls I've heard from some of these current broadcasters. The Eagle father and son duo is strong, Ian and Noah. I mean, Noah, my gosh. Joe Davis. Joe Davis is a guy that could be doing this for 40 years, my goodness. He's younger than me. He's not even out of his 30s yet, Joe Davis. And here he is, like number 1 MLB play-by-play guy, Dodgers television play-by-play guy, number 2 in the NFL on Fox. He's only behind Burkhardt and Brady. Yeah, it's a young man's you talk about a young man's sport and coaching in the NFL. It's a young man's broadcasting fraternity right now, Rob, and some of them are pretty good.
Yeah, they are. And where that's concerned, sometimes you get frustrated with the analysts on the other side with, they're all ex professional football players for the most part. Every single analyst that we listen to, whether it be Aikman or Collinsworth or Romo, et cetera, et cetera. But the living in the exact moment to me just sometimes is very frustrating. Chris Collinsworth stating a lot of things that you just don't, you wonder how they're saying this stuff. I won't get into particulars. We don't have enough time, but I think the play-by-play stuff, I'm going to go a little deeper though. You started rattling off some names there. And for me, guys like Ray Scott, who called the Ice Bowl between Green Bay and Dallas way back when, and was always on the call for the Astro Bluebonnet Bowl, an old bowl game. Also Ron Franklin, who did a lot of college football.
Yes,
it's
he
just
did.
like you say, it's the voices that you get used to. And they're
Nelly, Keith Jackson. We miss him.
Keith Jackson is one of the best. So absolutely. The guys that are doing the play-by-play right now, and I do happen to like Chris Fowler. I think he does a good job.
Yeah.
And so I don't know who we even get this weekend, Ian. I don't know who's involved in the broadcast of the AFC and the NFC championship games, but I'm sure we'll get the top two teams.
Yeah. You'll get Nance Romo, CBS for the AFC. You'll get Burkhart Brady for Fox for the NFL. By the way, Romo's getting a lot of grief, and you're right. Romo can go on a tangent every now and then. He did call Josh Allen Mahomes once during the broadcast.
That's true, but I can excuse that. It's tough sometimes.
He does have a lot of Mahomes tendencies in his game, Josh Allen. Yeah. So yeah, I do get it from that standpoint, no question. But yeah, there were a lot of great. I wish I was alive for the era of Monday Night Football that had Howard Cosell, Don Meredith, and Frank Gifford. Yeah. Like that was, I think, one of the original three in the Monday Night Football when it started on ABC in the late 70s and early 80s. That's just a little bit before I was born, 1985. I wish I was around for that. I mean, when I first got exposed to Monday Night Football, it was primarily Al Michaels, Frank Gifford, and Dan Deerdorf. You know, those were the three that did Monday Night Football. But everyone raves about how great, not good, great, the Gifford Meredith, and Cosell trio was. Yeah.
Yeah, they played off each other very, very well. I think it was Cleveland Jets 1970. I was probably 9 years old then. And that was the first game. And those guys just obviously Meredith was a character, Cosell was a character, and Gifford was the steady point in that booth. So it worked out really, really well.
No doubt. Frank Gifford, all class too, because they asked him to step aside to do the play-by-play and just have him be an analyst when Al Michaels came on board for Monday Night Football. And when Al came on board, he had to suck up his pride and say, you know what? Okay, I'll move aside. And he did. He stayed on the broadcast, but not as the primary play-by-play guy anymore, Frank Gifford. That probably wasn't an easy decision to make. All of a sudden, Al Michaels, you're going to make him now the play-by-play guy, but no issues. Man of class, and just, moved along to the analyst role, and Al took over as play-by-play. And here's Al now in his 80s and still going, and signed up for another season of prime Thursday Night Football next year with Kirk Herbstreit. So he's the last. He is the absolute last of the old guard still standing, Al Michaels, right now, as far as like the old school when we were growing up, broadcasters. He's the only one left, really, right now. I guess Jim Nance is getting up there because he started in the 80s, but Al Michaels and him, two of the few that are left. All right, let's get into the games, Rob. AFC Championship, here we go. New England and Denver. New England, 4.5-point road favorites, 42.5 the total in this game. It looks like another great weather day for the second straight week in Denver for this game. It couldn't have been better conditions last Sunday for football, and I'm seeing 6-mile-per-hour winds. I'm seeing a little bit chillier this time around, 31 Fahrenheit. Is the temperature, right around the freezing mark, but no rain, light wind, still pretty good. And obviously nowhere near the cold we saw in Chicago last Sunday night for the Rams and the Bears. We'll start with the Denver offense because that's the big story. Bo Nix out, Jarrett Stidham in. What are we going to get? It's a guy that hasn't started a regular season game in, 4 years? I think 2022. The last time we saw him in a regular season game. Remember, there's a guy that's been in the Patriots organization, and actually he does have a connection to Josh McDaniels, who just happens to be the offensive coordinator, of course, now for the Patriots. The Raiders, he was there for a bit, and of course now with Denver. What's significant about Jarrett Stidham with Denver? He's been here for both seasons that Sean Payton has been the head coach. So what does that mean? It means he knows the offense. He knows the playbook. He knows the terminology. He knows the system. And he should be, just from that starting point, be a step ahead of maybe where certain quarterbacks would be thrust into this situation where they're having to start all of a sudden for an injured starting quarterback. Now, there are some people making the comparisons to Philadelphia and Nick Foles years ago when he stepped in for an injured Carson Wentz. That's a little bit different, though. Philadelphia was a loaded football team. I think a better top-to-bottom roster all over the place compared to this version of the Denver Broncos. But I do get why people are making the comparisons. There's no question about that. He's stepping in here, Jarrett Stidham, against a New England defense that, to be honest with you, a lot of their defensive numbers down the stretch of the regular season started to decline a little bit for New England. Like, they weren't as good against the run second half of the regular season. There were teams that were able to move the football against them, but you can't deny here in the playoffs, in the two games against the Chargers and the Texans, their defensive front has just blown up and destroyed the line of scrimmage against the two teams they played, whether it was Stroud and the Texans or whether it was Herbert and the Chargers. So I guess the onus is going to be on this Denver offensive line to be able to hold up in pass protection, to be able to give Jarrett Stidham the time he needs to throw the football, and to be able to open up those holes for the run game. And a run game that, let's be honest, they contained Houston's run game relatively well last week, as well as the Chargers had a hard time running the football. So maybe that's not going to be easy. This is going to be quite the task ahead of this Denver offensive line. We'll see if they are up for it. Let's see the status of some of these injuries, too, with Bryant and Franklin, two of their receivers. They got banged up in that game last week against Buffalo. That's certainly a little bit concerning. One thing I know about Stidham is he's not he doesn't have the mobility of a Josh Allen or Bo Nix or, some of the quarterbacks we saw last weekend in the playoffs, but he can certainly move a bit. Like, he's not an absolute Eli Manning-esque statue in the pocket either. He can move if he has to. He's not necessarily going to be just a sitting duck back there if the pocket collapses. He can move around if he has to. So that's a huge matchup. Can the Denver offensive line hold off a surging New England defensive front and a secondary that's been locking down opposing receivers? Nobody was getting open for the Chargers. Houston had a hard time, and obviously Nico Collins being out was a big deal, but it was still very difficult to gain separation for Houston's receivers. So can these Denver receivers down the field, and all the attention, you would think Christian Gonzalez locked up on Cortland Sutton. Who else is going to step up now for the Denver Broncos as far as being able to be that second, third, fourth target and second, third, fourth option for Jarrett Stidham? So that's the question. But I will say this about the New England defense before we proclaim they're playing as good as anything right now. Houston's offensive line's not very good. C.J. Stroud's been a mistake-prone quarterback. Herbert and the Chargers' offensive line's been a mess most of the year. So part of me thinks this actually could be a little more tougher on the Patriot defense, this matchup, just because, they feasted on lots of O-line problems for both Houston and the Chargers in those two games. Then I'll turn it around to Denver's defense versus New England's offense. And I have no trust in it whatsoever, the Denver Broncos defense. I will hit on the same theme I hit on with you last week when we talked Buffalo-Denver. You give any offense that's got a pulse to it against this Denver defense, and I don't trust the Bronco defense. We have now seen it play out time and time and time again with Denver. They had no problem stopping Geno Smith in Las Vegas and Chris Oladokun in Kansas City, Chargers when they rested Herbert and played Trey Lance, and a lot of their great defensive numbers, these great stats coming against the weakest teams they've played, but they played Mariota and Washington on a Sunday night. They got gashed, and they gave up big points. They played Green Bay and Jacksonville, two playoff teams, two playoff quarterbacks at home. They got gashed both games, 26 to Green Bay, 34 to Jacksonville. They played Buffalo last week, divisional round, another home game. Yes, they win and they survive, but they get gashed again, 30 points. And really, Buffalo stopped themselves with turnovers, not necessarily the Denver defense stopping them in that game. The question is, where do you put New England's offense with Drake May compared to Jacksonville, compared to Green Bay, compared to Buffalo, these teams at home that the Broncos got ripped apart by on that side of the ball? And I would argue maybe not quite Buffalo, not quite, Jacksonville down the stretch was rolling. Green Bay, was rolling offensively against Denver until the injuries mounted. But I'll say this, if they're not quite up to that level, New England offensively, of those three teams, they're not that far behind. I put them at least in the same stratosphere, at least somewhat in the same ballpark, New England and Drake May, as Green Bay, as Jacksonville, as Buffalo offensively. So I think Denver's going to struggle here. I think Drake May can do enough. I like the way his accuracy's been great. I'll take you back, Rob, to that Houston game. The ball he zipped into Demario Douglas on that fourth down early in the game, like that was just a seed he threw right on target, in stride. And of course, the ball to Kayshon Boutte, which was a great catch too, incredible catch by Kayshon Boutte in the fourth quarter. But it was, again, a very well-located football by Drake May in that game. And I don't know if I fully trust the Denver run defense either. He talked about how they've been thrown on by Trevor Lawrence and Jordan Love and Josh Allen and all these quarterbacks. What about the run defense? Again, they struggled with James Cook. I know he had the fumble, James Cook, at the one point, but they didn't really slow him down. He had 112 rushing yards. And TreVeyon Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson, that tandem is coming to town. So I think New England has success. I think they move this football because I think Denver's defense, the more I watch against any sort of competent offense, and I'm at least willing to say New England as a competent offense, is going to move the ball. We've seen this number stay pretty close to where it's been all week, right? 5. It's actually been a slight move to Denver down to 4.5. The total opened as low as 40.5. It's up to 42.5. And I got in at 41.5, and I agree with the move. It's just too low in my mind. And I'm going to take my chance with another Denver game over. We don't need a shootout here. If we can get both teams to 20, we're going to hit because the game can't end 20-20. Someone's going to have to kick a field goal and win the game. Okay, so that would mean if both teams get to 20, it's going to have to be 23, unless there's a safety. But, what are the chances? 23-20, you can get there with where this total is right now. And I think it can get there. Quite honestly, I think it can. I don't think Denver's defense I trust even against New England and Drake May. And this is on the road now for Drake May. I get that. It's not at Foxborough now, so it's going to be a little bit tougher. But, boy, this Denver defense, said it last week, Rob, I'll say it again. Anybody with a pulse can move it on this Denver defense. I think New England will, and I wouldn't be shocked if Stidham and the Broncos are a little bit more productive and able to move the ball and at least score at least enough points. Because New England defense, the element of surprise is there. What are we going to get? How can Peyton scheme it up for his quarterback here? And you got to give him the opportunity to do that. That's the one thing with Peyton. He's not the most affable guy to deal with in the media. But the one thing he can do is coach offense, scheme it up, game plan it up, and throw some things in there that maybe this very solid, surging New England defense, based on the way they've played in their 2 playoff games, maybe throws them off balance just a little bit. So at a number this low and with weather a non-factor, I will take my chances going to the window with another Denver Broncos playoff over. Rob, what do you think here, New England, Denver?
Yeah, because the number, and that's what we're always betting against, right, Ian? I mean, we can analyze till the cows come home, but it's really the number that we're betting against here, and the number does seem low in this, at least for modern day standards. A 41.5 is low. Obviously, it's predicated off of the fact that Denver's got a backup quarterback in Jarrett Stidham here, but there's no, in fact, that number's been bet up to 42.5, right? 40.5 up to 42.5. But everybody in the Broncos building seems to have faith in Jarrett Stidham. You have to have faith, right? I mean, that could be coach speak coming out of Peyton's mouth. It could be good teammate speak coming out of the players' mouths.
I'll just say one thing I forgot to mention. He was awesome in August in the preseason. He was now, this is not preseason football. I get that. But boy, did he look so very comfortable in 2 of the opportunities he got in the preseason. And he does know the playbook. Keep that in mind.
And there's no issue with his arm. And he's got arm strength the same as Bo Nix does. Probably doesn't have the same running ability when you talk about incorporating quarterback run into your package, scramble ability, broken play ability. I think Stidham has that. But again, you're not going to be calling plays, RPOs, a lot of them with Jarrett Stidham, I wouldn't think. That obviously is the first thing right off the bat when you start to handicap this game. Where do you put the chances of Denver with Jarrett Stidham? But the second thing, Ian, you got to it, and I'm all about it, is that New England defensively destroyed 2 of the 3, 4 worst offensive lines in the NFL this year. Look at the 2 quarterbacks who got banged around the most, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud. To go through those offensive lines, to me, doesn't represent any turn of the corner as far as New England's capability goes. Last 7 games down the stretch, and I'll throw out their final game against Miami, which was a throwaway game by Miami. Didn't matter. They allowed in those 7 games 141 yards per game rushing. It was terrible. And prior to that, they had only allowed 2 teams to get over 100 yards because teams were busy throwing on them. The first 9 games, they couldn't stop the pass. So it is interesting. New England, I think the defensive numbers that have been put up are a little bit flawed simply because, and again, depending upon how much you put into the metrics and the analytics, Denver's pass protection unit is rated number 1 in the NFL. You're not going to get the CJ Stroud. You're not going to get to, or Justin Herbert the same way that you would get to Jarrett Stidham here. Denver's offensive line is that good. So I think New England does run into some issues there. I also New England averaged 3.9 yards per play against Houston last week. What's so great about that? They're gifted a whole bunch of points. They didn't really move the football. In fact, in either game that they've played so far, they haven't really moved the football until the dam collapsed. Like the defense has just had enough. We can't support the lousy offense anymore. New
We're
England's
on
going
the
to score
field a
some points.
ton, and we just, the dam breaks, right?
That's it, right? And New England started scoring. Once they got separation, it was all over. So it's a different opponent. We'll see what happens here. The injuries are huge. Pat Bryant was off to a great start in that game. Concussion. Limited practice on Wednesday. I don't know if he practiced today. Troy Franklin, limited practice yesterday, concussion. New England has some issues too, as far as head injuries are concerned. Carlton Davis, the corner who made his first 2 interceptions of the year last week, head injury, who knows? Harold Landry, Christian Ellis, who was in on a ton of plays defensively, right now limited practice. They think Landry didn't practice. Ellis was limited. So we have to clear some of that up first. Denver, to your point about the other two teams not getting any separation against New England secondary, Denver doesn't have a group that gets separation either. Sean Payton basically has to scheme it up to get the separation. The guy who came through was Marvin Mims. He's the fastest guy. He is the guy that's able to get deep. If they can find a way to get to him, maybe too much attention drawn to Sutton. We'll see. Tight end's going to have to factor big for Denver here, I would think. Evan Ingram, certainly capable. I don't know that New England traveling here is a 4.5-point favorite over Denver. Honestly, all things aside, you have to. If Stidham doesn't give the way a game because of jitters, and I don't think he's the kind of kid that will. Obviously, a Baylor and then Auburn, 2 different college careers, really. But a strong-arm quarterback who, as you said, knows the playbook. Peyton has said that the playbook doesn't change just because the quarterback does. So I don't think, to your point about playing over, I don't think you're going to see one of these situations where, well, we're just going to run it to protect our quarterback. If you do that, you might not score in the game if New England can march 8 up in the box. So they have to try some things. Drake May has been good at times, just like Bo Nix has been good at times in the playoffs. But the two of them have had bad moments too. They're barely 50% passers in these playoffs. So I don't know. I think New England on the road is going to have a little bit of difficulty. Not that Mile High is this. It used to be tougher to play in than it is now, I think. But I think 4.5 might be too much here for New England to cover. And I'm on your side where total is concerned. I think the people got it right because 23-20 gets you paid here if you bet over. And boy, 23-20 has, to me, it has the sound of the final score of this game, if not higher. So I'll probably be there with over. I may get there with Denver plus the points, as long as we're going to get 4.5 here. I just don't know that the drop off. Somebody did, Ian, maybe you've heard this as well. Somebody did a summary of quarterback ratings between Bo Nix during his pro career under Sean Payton and Jarrett Stidham during his pro career in years where he played extensive snaps. Nix rates out as a 91. Stidham rates out as an 88. It's not that much difference. Again, Bo Nix's big play ability, the things that wow you, are probably what people are considering the most. Not so sure Stidham can't hit on a couple big plays as well.
He does have an arm on him. There's no question. Like, he's got the ability to throw that football, Stidham. Will he be able to find his receivers, and can they get loose, from Christian Gonzalez and company and that great New England Patriots secondary? That's going to end up being the question. But Carlton Davis, you mentioned his injury. That would be a big deal. It's a good, stable, veteran presence to have in that defensive backfield for the New England Patriots. Of course, Tampa Bay Buccaneer for a very long time, and obviously to be missing him would hurt, that Patriots secondary. So, yeah, I like this. Like I said, as long as it doesn't get too much higher, the over is, I think, going to get there. And I'm with you as far as the side goes. I'm not there yet with ready to lay 4.5 with New England on the road in this spot.
It's a good play calling matchup, isn't it? I mean, you have Josh McDaniels on one side, Peyton on the other. And I don't know if you've heard definitively or not. I haven't yet, but there is some rumor that J.K. Dobbins, how effective he would be, remains to be seen. But J.K. Dobbins could make an appearance here for Denver after a lot of weeks missed due to injury.
That's right. And that would obviously turn it into a platoon situation at running back with RJ, because I don't think they'd totally cast RJ Harvey to the side, but certainly there's the chance. And that's important from a player prop standpoint. If you're going to bet rushing yards or rushing attempts over with Denver running backs in this game, you want to know, is Dobbins going to be in or out before you make those decisions about how to bet those? No question. All right, NFC Championship game. LA Rams, Seattle Seahawks, Seattle 2.5-point home favorites, 46.5 the total. You know, we're in the business of also selling picks. We're also in the business of having subscribers. And I know one thing is that the subscribers don't want Ian Cameron to come out, later in the week, find out Ian Cameron is passing in the NFC Championship game. You know, nobody wants that bullshit. Nobody wants that nonsense. They want an opinion at the very least, or a lean at the very least. But I'll be honest, Rob, I'm having a real hard time with this football game. I think it's a great game. I can't wait to watch it, but man, is it tough to make a convincing argument for one side or the other. And the reason for that is because I can make pretty solid arguments for both of these football teams here in this game. Let's start with what is a clear, in my mind, a clear situational advantage for Seattle. They're at home for a second straight week. This is an LA Rams team that had to start the playoffs going west to east, all the way down to Charlotte, North Carolina, play the Carolina Panthers, and then you're going up to the Midwest in the frigid cold of Soldier Field in Chicago last weekend on the road again, and now you zip back to the West Coast and then up to the Pacific Northwest here to Lumen Field in Seattle for a third straight road game here in the playoffs. That's not easy, and that's obviously situational edge and scheduling edge for Seattle here in this game. That's the first thing that we want to point out. I also want to point out the weather, again, is absolutely phenomenal in Seattle. This is almost unheard of for January in Seattle. That back-to-back playoff games for the Seahawks at home, we're going to get gorgeous conditions. We're going to get mild temperatures for January, low 40s Fahrenheit, no rain, no wind. It's going to be perfect at Lumen Field in Seattle Sunday night. So weather won't be an issue here in this game. This Seattle defense is something else. They really are. They showed it against San Francisco. They've been right there as one of, if not the best defense in the NFL. Their numbers against the run are just absolutely spectacular. Less than 4 yards per carry against the run that they're giving up this year. Number one, I think, in that category. Just they suffocate the run game. And we know with Sean McVay, he does want Williams and Corum, his running back tandem, to be involved. Will they have any success running the football is going to be the ultimate question. This just could be one of those classic instances where if the Rams are going to score points, move the football, and ultimately win, it's going to come down to the golden arm of the veteran Matthew Stafford here in this game for the Los Angeles Rams, and being able to make plays against this Seattle defense with the likes of Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, Mumpfield, and, of course, the tight end Colby Parkinson. Will he be able to find his receivers down the field? So we have two games to look back on for this matchup because these are division rivals. They played each other twice in the regular season. And if you look at the two regular season games, we had a 21-19 LA Rams victory at home November 16th. That was a weird box score where Seattle had actually 414 yards to LA's 249, and yet the Rams won the game. And why did they win that game? The turnover bug hit Sam Darnold hard, very hard in that football game. 4 interceptions, no touchdowns. It felt like he was moving the team. 105 receiving yards in that game from the great Jackson Smith and Jigba, and yet it seemed like the turnovers were taking points off the board every time Seattle moved it in that game. Now, in the second meeting, we went from a low-scoring 40-point game to it was a shootout, and it just got crazy on the Thursday night late in the regular season in Seattle. One of the best regular season games that I think I've seen in quite some time. The Rams, against that tremendous Seattle defense, 581 total yards. If you could believe it, 581 total yards against a Seattle defense we all think is among the best in the NFL. It's almost stunning they put up that kind of yardage in that football game. What's also stunning is that we thought the Rams were well on their way to a second straight win in the regular season against Seattle. 30-14 lead in the fourth quarter, Rob, of that game. And what changed the proceedings in the fourth quarter, a 58-yard punt return in that game, and that just set the wheels in motion for the comeback from Rashid Shaheed, who has been quite the addition. And we saw it last week, got San Francisco right behind the 8-ball, right off the opening kickoff with that kickoff return touchdown to start the game. And that set the wheels in motion. 30-22, they converted the 2-point conversion, and whether it was momentum, whether it was the Rams getting a little too conservative at that time with the lead, and then Sam Darnold, let's give him credit, caught fire, and the Seahawks roared back and won that game 38-37. Yet it felt like for 3 quarters, the Rams were in control of that football game and on the verge of winning it. So you have a win for the Rams against the Seahawks in the first meeting. They played great for 3 quarters, and then the roof caved in the fourth quarter, although you got to give, you could say Rams collapse, but you also have to say Seattle comeback, and a great job by them to come back in that game. So when you look at it, the Rams could easily have won both of those games against Seattle, but they didn't. And they could have had home field advantage for this big NFC championship game instead of Seattle, and now they don't because of, that 38-37 loss the second time around. And they gave up, in that game as well. Their defense, which we know there's been holes in this Rams defense down the stretch, they gave up 415 total yards. So those are 2 hard games to really decipher and make sense of, quite honestly. You had the 40-point game. You had Seattle putting up 414 total yards and only scoring 19 points because of 4 interceptions by Darnold. And then you had Seattle scoring racking up 415, but yet their defense, which was pretty good in the first meeting despite losing, was worse in the second meeting despite winning. So, I mean, it's pretty crazy to see. So what do you glean from those 2 games? It's hard. What I've come down to in this game is the crux of where I'm at. My initial thought was Seattle. Less than a field goal looks cheap. That's a great defense. It's the home field. It's everything. And yet I look at the 2 meetings, and I see Sam Darnold again at the focal point of this thought process for me. What else is new? That he had 6 interceptions. 6 in the 2 games this season versus the LA Rams. He's got to clean that up. It cost him the first meeting. It damn near cost him the second game against Seattle. Or against the Rams, rather, and it should have cost them that second game probably too, because they were up 30-14, the Rams, and then the game just changed at that point. So you have Darnold coming into this game with the 2 touchdowns to 6 interceptions against the Rams this year in those 2 games, and then you think back to what we saw in the wild card last year when, guess what, he faced this very same Rams team as a member of the Minnesota Vikings, and it was an unmitigated disaster for Sam Darnold. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what's most concerning here. And the one thing, we've talked about this too with the Rams, their linebacking core, the secondary at times, you can throw on them. But the one thing they have a pretty good pass rush. And we've talked about Charles Cross, and we've talked about the offensive line. That is going to be their duty. You limit Jared Verse in this game. You keep him away from Sam Darnold. You're going to have a great chance to win this game if you're Seattle. But it's unreal, the difference in the Sam Darnold numbers once again this season. Now, it's probably like this for a lot of quarterbacks, but for Sam Darnold, it's unbelievable. The dichotomy with under pressure again and not under pressure. His statistics at the quarterback spot for the Seattle Seahawks. And I know I wrote it down here. Oh, there we go. Darnold, when not under pressure, he's completing like 75% of his passes, and he's averaging close to 10 yards per pass attempt. Like when a clean pocket is there for him, he's moving the ball. He's doing a good job. He's avoiding mistakes. And then when he is under pressure, the completion rate is barely 50%, and we're looking at a little over 6 yards per pass attempt and a little over 50% with his completion rate when he's under pressure. Jared Verse. Those are the 2 words, and if I'm Mike Macdonald, I am putting all my efforts into making sure I've got my O-line ready to run block and pass protect against this bastard here in this game. Because if I don't, and I don't keep him off my quarterback, we're going to see a lot of what we've seen in 2 games with Darnold against the Rams this year. And that's mistakes, and that's interceptions. It's hard to fathom that, this is a quarterback that has thrown 6 interceptions against the LA Rams in 2 games this year. And we know how big turnovers are in playoff games. Just ask Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills last week. And then we go back to that 27-9 Rams win against Sam Darnold and the Vikings last year, and he had an interception there in that game. So if you throw that game into the mix, in 3 games against the Rams, last 3 times Darnold's faced the Rams, he's thrown 7 interceptions. And that's the stumbling block for me, Rob, in keeping me away from endorsing the Seahawks with great confidence. So I'm at the point now where it's stuck between a rock and a hard place. I'll lean Rams. Rams probably become a bet here if I could find a 3 at some point. But like I said, that's glaring to me. All the mistakes and how these pressures from the Rams have gotten to him and forced him into these mistakes. We love the defense. But if I were to bet Seattle, I'd have to have full confidence, Rob, that Sam Darnold won't pull a C.J. Stroud from last week. He will let his defense win him this game and not make mistakes. If Jared Verse gets to you, man, take the sack. If Jared Verse gets to you, throw the damn thing out of bounds, okay? That's what you got to do. Don't do what C.J. Stroud did last week and try to be hero when you're under pressure and about to go down. Don't try to make the hero play. Your defense is that friggin' good, okay? Just don't make those critical mistakes. But he's made them, and he's made them multiple times against the Rams, and that's something I have a hard time getting over. Rob, what do you think for this great football game?
I think where that's concerned, you could flip that argument and make the same case against Matthew Stafford, who played a defense last week that was a miserable defense all season long, and comes out and goes 20 for 42 and at times looks scared to death in that game, throwing balls all over the place. Matthew Stafford, for what it's worth, didn't necessarily help his team win that game last week. He was horrific by his standards.
I will say that. I was shocked by the pressure the Bears got on him
so
in that O-line.
If you're Seattle, you're going to that game tape, right? And you're saying, what did Chicago do to get this guy so rattled? The Rams are going to go to the game tape and say, we got to fix what got Matt Stafford almost killed last week because he gets sacked 4 times. Like I say, he's only 20 of 42. He did not look like Matthew Stafford. I'm of the opinion that both of these coaching staffs, after seeing each other twice, after going to game tape of what teams have tried to do against them in these playoffs, that they can make the necessary adjustments. The thing that I keep coming back to, Ian, is the one unit that doesn't belong on this field is the Ram defense. Again, it's a pass rush only defense. You get beyond that pass rush and it's case closed. Charles Cross has a question mark next to his name for this week. I think they're being precautionary with him. Why take a shot with him in practice? We're going to need him in the game. Charles Cross did not play in the second matchup between Seattle and the Rams. That being said, in that second matchup, LA went for 580 plus, and 90% of it was through the air. 80% of it was through the air. All they had was Puka Nacua. Everybody knew but he had 16 targets.
Devontae Adams didn't play in that second game.
He didn't play in that game. Yep. And so you start putting Adams on the other side of the field. Seattle knew what was coming, and they still couldn't stop it. I'm going to get back to a phrase that I used last week about the Bills going into Denver. Josh Allen's going to get his no matter who the defense is. I truly feel like the Rams are going to get theirs no matter who the defense is. Sean McVay's seen this defense twice now. He'll find ways to score points. That being said, I feel even better about the Seattle offense against the other team here, the Ram defense. There's a little bit of trouble here with Zach Charbonnet being out, right? Zach Charbonnet got hurt and won't play in this game, but Kenneth Walker was absolutely on fire last week. So if you have to go, and there's some talk that George Halani, the Boise State kid, might be back to at least back him up a little bit here, which would help. 46.5 just appeals to me so much in good weather. They like to ask these teams to get to 24-23, 27-20. I'm probably a little bit harsh on Matt Stafford from last week because in watching that game, as soon as the wind picked up, started the second quarter, the winds got out of control. And the quarterback play out of Matt Stafford, again, he was under pressure and looked scared for a little bit, or like he didn't know where to go with the ball. But the wind had an effect too. It won't have an effect here. I really think this game gets over. Both teams, you said, what can we glean from these first two games? When the final results, when the cumulative results are 1 point difference, one total yard difference, there's not much. All we can say is that they're very, very equal. And overall, the 53-man overall rosters, Rashid Shaheed could be a difference maker. Again, he's been a difference maker since he got to Seattle, and they're finding ways now to incorporate him into the offense, whether it be these end arounds, whether it be deep pass patterns, whether it be quick screens, et cetera, et cetera. Kubiak's a pretty good offensive coordinator. I know Sean McVay's a great play caller. Defensively, I trust Mike McDonald's defense to make the plays necessary. So I think Seattle's probably the winner. But more than that, I just think this game's going to find its way to 47 points. If you're going to beat the Rams, and I shouldn't say it because Chicago did it last week, right? Or Chicago lost, but the game went 20-17. 20-17 in real bad elements. I don't think that's happening again. So I'm going to be on over, and I'll probably be on Seattle. I just think right now, top to bottom, they're the best team. And again, if I'm going to single out one unit, I'm going to say the Ram defense is the weak link out of all four units. Seattle's offense, some people might point to that with Sam Darnold, but I think even that offensive unit is more capable than the Ram defensive unit if you just limit the pass rush a little bit, somehow, some way. And with two chances already to see them, I got to believe that they do here. Sam Darnold somehow came through at the end of that, when they're, let's face it, Zach Charbonnet's wandering around the end zone and picks up a ball and it's a 2-point conversion.
Yeah,
a lot of things had to go. Yep. A lot of things had to go right. But I think there's going to be points here. So I'll be on the over, and I'll probably be on Seattle.
Very interesting. That is, I'm telling you what, I have heard from, various people I've talked to and shows I've been on. There's not a single soul until Rob Vino just now that I've heard liking the over in this game until Rob just now. Everyone I've talked to loves this under. Thinks now third meeting, division rivals. It's cagey. It's close to the vest. It's a conservative game plan both ways. I get that line of think, and that's why the under's taking money. I think you might be best off, if you like this over, to just wait, see if you get a little more value, because it just took a hit like an hour ago down to 46.5. And this total opened as high as 48. In some spots here, and 47.5 is where it was most of the week. And now it's 46.5 everywhere. So there's a lot of support for the under, which means if you like this over and you agree with Rob, there's no rush to bet it right now. And there is no weather issues at the moment either. And one thing I'll do to support your case with the over, because I'm not quite as bullish on the over here in this game as you are. But one thing, and I'm not playing it under, but I'm just not as bullish on the over. But one thing I will say to bolster your case, the first meeting, 40 points, but 663 total yards. Probably should have been more than 40 points when you look at it in that game. And then the second meeting that went haywire, 38-37, 996 total yards between the two teams. If you average out the two regular season meetings, Rams and Seahawks, they averaged 829.5 total yards per game. If you average out the two games, 829.5 total yards per game. And the average total yards per game probably tells you that if we got something even somewhat in that vicinity here, with where this number is with the total, you're going to have a puncher's chance to get up and over it.
Yeah, and I think for what it's worth, if you're Sean McVay, ever since he lost in the Super Bowl to New England 13-3, and had to admit I was outcoached, I was too conservative, I was too close to the vest, I didn't open. He opens things up now on a regular basis. And I think that's the way Kubiak will play the game too, open it up. I don't believe that these guys are going to march to the line and say, let's just play field position all day long and try and win a low scoring. Anybody who plays the Rams that way is going to end up losing. Chicago had to pull out all the stops last week and had plenty of chances to score.
It felt like we got into a little bit of a field position, conservative style of game last week with the Rams and Bears, but maybe some of that was the wind, the cold, you name it. And you mentioned that wind really, and it's just a swirling wind as well at Soldier Field. And it started whipping around, and that maybe influenced that, little bit more of a cautious approach than maybe just match up and game circumstances, more so weather circumstances. So maybe don't expect that necessarily here when weather's going to be great.
I would say real quick, because I feel like I texted you at one point just to make note of Bear receivers dropping the football. There were a lot of drops by the Bears last week on
Oh, you mentioned the one for Odunze on that first Chicago drive when they were going right down the field. Yep.
7 more, right? Right
Yep.
there. It should have been 7 more. So they can be exploitable. There's no question about it. And where Matt Stafford and 2 receivers are concerned this time around,
Yep.
I have to believe that they're. And Kyron Williams and the ground game, Blake Corum, they did run for, I think, $118 in that second game. So they did get almost to 120 against this Seattle run defense.
Yeah,
I
no
think
doubt.
Kevin Dotson came back last week, right, to play right guard for the Rams, which helps their offensive line case.
Yes, Ed, there's no question. So, like I said, very interesting to see, like I said, how this plays out. There's no question. And it is worth noting, too, you have Jason Myers for Seattle. And, they had issues with who's a pretty solid kicker, veteran. He's been around the block. He's more reliable than not. He's missed a couple, but he's more reliable than not. And on the Rams side, they have a better kicker now because Carty was a mess. When they had Josh Carty at one point this year, he was missing stuff you couldn't miss. But they've got the thicker kicker now. Harrison Mevis here for the Rams, and he's done a nice job, man. He has come in here and really done well. He made the kicks, made the field goals he should make, hasn't slipped up very much at all. So you've got pretty reliable field goal kickers where if you get, to those field goal range territories on the field, you're going to probably have a good chance to get at least 3 points on the board, in a lot of those possessions. So that's something. And plus, another thing to factor in with this over, you have dynamite special teams, especially on Seattle here with Rashid Shaheed, who's can obviously proven he can take it a long distance, on a kick return as well. So factor that in as well. But this is a great game. I can't wait. It's a very, very tough game to call, but boy, it is a great game, and I'm excited to watch. Hopefully it lives up. If it's anything close to that crazy Thursday nighter late in the regular season, we're in for a great football game there to decide the NFC Championship. Rob, great stuff, great show. As always, shout out to everyone tuning in to the show. As always, hit the like button on the way out. But before we wrap up, we'll see if we can deliver a conference championship Sunday best bet. Rob, we'll go to you. What do you got for us for best bet?
I got a couple to choose from here, Ian. I think that for purposes of the show, I'll go back to the home underdog, Denver, plus 4.5. I know New England's looked impressive, and especially on the defensive side, because they haven't looked all that impressive offensively. They've made clutch plays, but overall, for 60 minutes, they haven't looked like a great offense against 2 really good defenses. But the defense dominated bad offensive lines, and Denver just doesn't have that. I think Sean Payton will be ready. Having home field probably does play a part here. You're talking about a New England squad that was just put together this year and now has to go on the road and try and win a championship game. I'm not sure Drake May's ready to win it by more than 4.5. So for me, best bet for this show will be home underdog, Denver Broncos plus 4.5.
There you go. Denver Broncos plus 4.5 for Rob Vino with his best bet against the New England Patriots in the AFC Championship game. My best bet, by default, it has to be best bet because we've got small action on the other game, Rams and Seahawks. Very light wagers, very light opinions. By far right now, my best bet for Championship Sunday. It's also from the New England-Denver game. It's over 42.5. I think that number is just too light. I don't trust Denver's defense. I think Drake May and the Patriots will move the ball just like all the better offenses have against Denver, Jacksonville, Green Bay, Buffalo, especially in Denver too. Those 3 teams move the ball. I think New England will have success. Don't be shocked if Sean Payton schemes up a better offense out of Jarrett Stidham than people think. He's been around the block. He's a veteran quarterback, been in the system 2 years in a row. Don't be shocked if Denver has more offensive success. And Rob made the point. New England's defense has looked awesome, but Texans O-line problems, Chargers O-line problems, Denver's offensive line a little bit better, a little bit sturdier. And now you're doing that on the road. You got to ask this defense to bring that performance on the road. Not as easy. I think Denver can do enough and chip in enough, and we get this game over the total. So New England, Denver, over 42.5 for my Conference Championship Sunday Best Bet. Rob, always great talking NFL football with you. We'll bring you back in 2 weeks, the week before the Super Bowl. We'll bring you back on, and boy, we'll have some player props, tons of player props to talk about for the big game, side total for the Super Bowl. We'll break it all down, Rob, in a couple of weeks. Anything you want to say before we wrap it up?
No, thanks for the invitation again. Thanks to your audience for saying kind words about me, as you said in the beginning. I appreciate all that. Always love talking the games with you, Ian. The analysis, we go about as thorough as you can go on a show. Honestly, in my opinion, I've been around the block a little bit. So good luck to everybody this week. Cash some tickets, yourself included, and we'll get with you for Super Bowl. We're studying that. I don't know. How deep is it? 60-page prop booklet that the Westgate puts out?
Hundreds of props.
It's like going back to school again when that thing comes out.
It sure is, and we can't wait to talk about it. For Rob Vino, I'm Ian Cameron. Enjoy NFL Conference Championship Sunday, and good luck with your wagers, and we'll see you in a couple weeks for the Super Bowl right here on Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy.